I remember that day as if it were last week, not 10 years ago. The sun was filtering through the old oak branches, reflecting off the cobblestones of Elm Street, where I grew up. And then I saw her, Emily. She was standing in the middle of the intersection, as if emerging from a memory of her own. A little anxious, a little surprised, and her laugh, which quietly escaped her lips, instantly transported me back to the school cafeteria, where we used to laugh at jokes that no one else thought were funny. She was here, in my small town, after all these years. She had returned to look after her grandmother, and by chance, or perhaps fate decided it, she stumbled upon me. I was just stepping out of the Maple Bean coffee shop, a latte in hand, when she walked past and our eyes met. I barely recognized her at first. Grown up, confident, but with those same eyes that once made me lose my train of thought in math class. "Jake?" she asked, and I started laughing even before I answered. "Emily!" I paused, feeling a strange tremor in my chest. "You're here for long?" She shook her head, a little nervously, but with a smile. "Temporary, for a couple of months. My grandmother, well, she needs help." I nodded, trying to hide my surprise. A couple of months sounded short, but a feeling was already stirring in my heart that this time could change everything. We walked on together a little further, to the park that used to be our favorite after-school spot, the place where we shared secrets and dreams, and where I barely dared to hold her hand at graduation. Back then, we were both too young and scared. Now, we were adults, with experience, mistakes, and disappointments. "Remember sitting here and I was trying to teach you how to play chess?" I asked, trying to draw her out. She laughed, but with a quiet hint of sadness. "I remember. You always took it too seriously, and you never won." "Well, you weren't learning either," I replied, and our laughter broke the tension that had been hanging between us like an invisible shadow. We kept walking, down the streets that remembered our teenage footsteps. I noticed the small things, the store where she used to buy gum, the old newspaper stand, the bench by the fountain where we shared ice cream, and our first shared looks that felt like kisses. The town was small, but now it felt vast with memories and nostalgia. "Are you doing well here?" I asked suddenly, sensing the question was more important than it seemed. She was silent for a couple of seconds, looking at the old rooftops, at the trees that had grown tall again, as if remembering us. "It's difficult. But there's something about coming back, realizing that I'm still kind of at home here." We talked about the past, about friends scattered across the world, and about the small things that once seemed so big. But little by little, I felt something old, forgotten, but indestructible, slowly blossoming between us. I watched her bend down to smell the flowers in the park, watched the wind lift her hair, and my heart beat faster for the same reason it had 10 years ago. I barely recognized you right away. You back then and you now, the boy and the man. It's like those 10 years never happened, like we became adults in an instant. Oh, how many nights I stayed awake because of you back then, Jake. I just looked at her. Pain, joy, laughter, and anxiety were all mixed in one gaze. We both knew these few months could become what we had waited for our whole lives, or they could leave behind nothing but a memory. Only then did I realize that our story didn't have an ending yet, and that this fragile chance we were given could change everything, or slip through our fingers again like sand. But we would find that out tomorrow, when the sun rose again over Elm Street, and we decided whether we were ready to risk our hearts for the short time we had. The next morning, I woke up with the feeling that nothing would ever be the same. The streets of the town were still asleep, and I was already thinking about Emily, about her look last night when she quietly spoke my name. I decided to just walk over to the old lake, where we used to sit for hours on the pier, fishing and dreaming about a future that felt endless back then. And there she was, alone, with a thermos of coffee and a notebook in her hands, writing something down, her gaze lost in thought. She didn't notice me right away, and I enjoyed the moment. Watching her without disturbing the peace was strangely calming. "Jake!" Her voice suddenly rang out, and I jumped in surprise like a schoolboy caught doing something mischievous. "How did you know I was here?" "I can't say for sure, but I was drawn here just like before. And why are you here so early?" She smiled, and there was that light playfulness that always captivated me. "Grandma is sleeping in today, so I took advantage of the moment. I often remembered this place. I even dreamt about it." We sat on the pier, our legs dangling over the water, and the feeling of the past merged with the present. I noticed her skipping stones across the water, counting how many ripples spread from each one, and I remembered how we used to do the same thing, laughing that the more ripples, the more happiness. "You've changed," I said suddenly. "You too," she replied, not taking her eyes off the lake, "but in a good way, somehow. You're so calm. You probably don't worry about silly things anymore like you used to." We talked about life, about her job in another city, about my travels, about what we had lost and what we had found. And with every conversation, I felt something coming alive between us. Old, almost forgotten, but very real. "Oh, Jake," she said with a smile, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "I'm scared. Scared that I'm feeling the same way again, and that I'll have to leave soon." I took her hand. Her palm was warm, and her fingers gently squeezed mine. "I know," I whispered, "but you're here now, and we cannot think about it for at least a few weeks." She sighed deeply, closed her eyes for a moment, and then opened them, and in her gaze was that defenseless beauty that always made me forget everything else. "Maybe, but what if it's hard to forget afterward?" "Then we'll have the memories," I replied, smiling, even though I felt the same fears. We started meeting more often. Each meeting was a little celebration: walks along the streets of our childhood, old cafes with the aroma of vanilla pastry, laughter that erupted unexpectedly. One evening we found ourselves near the old movie theater that once showed movies for 20 cents, and there, under the flickering neon light, what I both feared and waited for happened. "Jake, do you remember back in school?" she began, and I felt my heart clench. "I remember," I replied quietly, "and nothing has changed." We laughed and then sat quietly next to each other, holding hands, because words were no longer necessary. Everything that was once left unsaid was finally heard between us. One morning, Emily's grandmother called, and anxiety was in her voice. Her condition had worsened. Emily had to stay home, and our meetings sharply decreased. I felt the invisible wall of time creeping up on us, and that every minute together became priceless. The summer flew by quickly. Every day with Emily felt both endless and too short. We walked on familiar streets, laughed, recalled old stories, teased each other, and at the same time felt the weight of what remained outside us, the limited time that was relentlessly slipping away. One evening, we were sitting on the roof of an old house near the lake, where we used to sit in silence for hours, looking at the stars. The wind wrapped around us, and the town below reflected in tiny lights. Emily leaned closer, her shoulders touching mine, and it felt strangely domestic, even though we knew she would leave in a few weeks. "Jake," she said quietly, looking at me, "sometimes I feel like we're trying to outrun time. I'm afraid that when I leave, all of this will disappear." I took her face in my hands and looked into those same eyes that once made me weak. "Even if we part, these moments will never disappear. I will remember them. I will remember you." She leaned in and hugged me. We were silent, letting the night air fill the pauses between the words. The following days were filled with small adventures. We cycled on the same paths where we once sped on rollerblades, we bought ice cream at the small kiosk that hadn't changed since our childhood, and even slipped into the old movie theater that showed films for the price of a student ticket. Every moment was filled with laughter, light jokes, touches, and the feeling that we had turned back time. The day of departure arrived. I met her at the train station, with a suitcase in her hands and doubt in her eyes. She held my hand as she once held a teenage secret and looked straight into my eyes. "Jake," she said quietly, "thank you for these wonderful days and the moments we shared." "It's mutual," I smiled. "If you have time, write or call. It's always nice to chat with a childhood friend." We stood on the platform, and the morning sun fell on her hair, making it golden. She hugged me, a long hug, as if trying to memorize her scent and warmth. I pressed against her, and the whole world around us disappeared. "Remember me," she whispered, "please." "I will remember," I replied, and my heart felt both warm and cold. We stepped away from each other, and she got on the train. As the car moved, I stood on the platform and watched her disappear around the bend in the tracks, knowing that this farewell carried no guarantee of a future. I returned home, to my life, but something had changed forever. The summer was short, but it left a mark on my heart, a reminder that sometimes one period can turn everything upside down, even if its duration is limited. When I sit alone in my apartment in the evenings, I sometimes open our old messages, laugh at the small things, and remember how we laughed under the old lights of Elm Street. I don't know if I'll ever see Emily again, but I know one thing: a love that once didn't happen can be given a chance, even if it only lasts a few months, and that's enough to remember. One autumn evening, she texted me, "I'll be home for Christmas, wait for me." Sometimes miracles happen. After that Christmas, we were never apart for long. Sometimes the shortest stories are the most powerful.